Alright, what's going on everyone? Today we're going to be upgrading the Ancient Discovery starter deck on Magic Arena. So if you want to upgrade these decks, you need to close this tab or scroll down, but it's a little bit easier if you close it. You want to select the deck. You cannot edit these, you can't change them at all, but you can clone them, and this is going to create a copy in your decks as you see here. This is my third copy because I've been upgrading these, and when you open it, you do want to click here if you're in this window mode, or up here if you're in this mode, and switch it over to standard because it defaults to alchemy. So this deck has two major themes. The first is Discover. This is the Cascade-like effect from Ixalan. So there are many cards like this one, and this one doubles Discovers. So there's a Discovery theme. And the second theme is Artifact Tokens. So you have this that makes two Gnomes. You have this that's an artifact that likes to be tapped. We have this that makes treasure. We have this that gets pumped when we have artifacts. And the reason we want artifacts is because we have this, which we can tap those to discover some more. But I do find that the deck just doesn't produce enough artifacts consistently to make stuff like this work. So we're going to be upgrading this with no rares. This is important. If you want to spend 10 or 20 rares on a deck, I would encourage you to go to a meta tracking website and build a tier 1 deck. In our case, we just want to make this deck more powerful the best we can without spending tons of rare wild cards. So let's start by adding rares to the deck. However, we're going to add rares to the deck from the other starter kit. So these are absolutely free. We're going to start by taking out Hit the Mother Load and replacing it with a Trumpeting Carnosaur. So the problem with Hit the Mother Load is it's very expensive. It discovers 10, but you could just as easily hit a 2-drop. You could pay 7 for this and just hit this little thing. And then it does technically make a bunch of treasures, but you already have 7 mana. It does give you artifacts for this, but we're going to have plenty of artifacts for this. Don't you worry. That's not going to be a problem. This, on the other hand, this is in, I believe, the dinosaur deck, I think. I probably should have written that down. But it also discovers 5, which hits everything in our deck. But the cool thing about this is 6 mana, 7/6 Trampler that also discovers 5. Awesome. I like it much better than this. And also, in the early game, if you're getting pressured by an aggro deck, you can just forget the dinosaur because you're not going to live long enough to cast it. And it's a 3 mana, deal 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker. So it's a removal spell if you're being pressured by aggro. So we're going to take this out. We're going to put this guy in. And yep, better. Next, we're going to take out one of these for 1 Sanguine Evangelist. Once again, I should have, I'll put it on screen. It's in this deck. So this is a 4 mana, 3/2 flyer. It's okay. It's fine. It's not that great. But this, on the other hand, is a 3 mana 2/1. It has Battle Cry, so it's going to pump up all of our other stuff. And then when it enters and when it dies, it makes a 1/1 bat. Technically, this doesn't add an artifact, so we're losing an artifact source. But trust me, a major part of my upgrade guide is going to be adding artifacts, much more powerful artifacts. So take one of these out for one of these, and that will be good for now. Next, we're going to take out 2 of these Attentive Sunscribes for 2 Mandible Justiciars. Justiciars. Look, whatever this is. So first off, this is an artifact, very important for this deck. It's a 2 mana 2/1 with lifelink, but what's really cool about this is every time an artifact enters, it's going to get +1/+1 until end of turn. And we have some really powerful things we can do with that. Right now, like we have this. Like if we turn 2 play the Mandible Justiciar thingy, and then play this turn 3, this is an artifact that enters, so it gets +1/+1. And then the 2 1/1s enter, so it gives it +3/+0. This can be a 5/4 attacker with lifelink on turn 3. So it actually works out pretty well, and it's common, super easy to craft, and I just like it better than these things. So we'll take those out, we'll put these in. So similarly, we're going to take these 2 out for 2 more of these. So this is, it feels like it could be cool. It's a 2 mana 4/4, it has flying. You need to tap 4 untapped artifacts, creatures, or lands. So it requires 6 lands. It's a 6 mana 4/4 basically, but it sort of has Convoke, right? You could think of this as a 6 mana 4/4 flyer with Convoke. That's what it is basically, because you can tap your artifacts and creatures. So I find that I can never cast it on turn 2 or 3. It's usually like turn 5 maybe if I'm lucky, and spending an entire turn and tapping my board for this. I mean, the 4/4 flyer is awesome, but it's just, I just find it too clunky and awkward. So I want to take these 2 out and put 2 more of these in. And these will get huge sometimes, especially bear in mind we also have this that can just put out tons of gnomes. I mean, it's pretty common to have this and have this be like a 6/5 lifelinker every turn. It's kind of cool. Next, we need to take out one of the weaker Discover cards, which is Atali's Favor, and we're going to replace it with a pretty weird looking card, but it's much more powerful than you might realize. It's subtly powerful. So the Favor, it gives a creature +1/+1 and trample. That's fine. I'd kind of want bigger creatures. It's also an enchantment, not an artifact. It just doesn't really synergize as much as I want. This, on the other hand, the main card doesn't look that exciting. 2 mana, artifact, gets a basic plains and gains 2 life. Boring, right? Not that exciting. However, 7 mana, craft with an artifact, you can flip it and it gives all your creatures +1/+1 and makes 2 1/1s. And that is very powerful, especially when combined with these, because it's once again, it's 3 triggers. This also triggers 3 times, right? And this does the same thing. It also pumps our board, and we usually have a board full of like, little 1/1s and stuff. So it's actually pretty awesome, and it's not that hard to get to 7 because it gets a plains, right? Every single time we draw one of these clay-fired bricks, we get another land, which gets us closer to flipping it, and the turn we flip it usually feels pretty good. So we'll take 3 of these out, and we'll put 3 of these in. And I also want to take out Connecting the Dots for a 4th one. I think this card is actually pretty good. My main issue with it is it doesn't impact the board when you play it, so I just find that I always fall behind, and I very rarely actually get to a point where the discard and sacrifice it to get a bunch of cards actually matters. I just feel like that happens once, and then the other 15 times I draw it, it's like, oh, it didn't actually do anything that game, and also I died. So it's cool, but this card, when you flip it, it's going to be explosive. It's always very powerful when you flip it, and it's not that hard to flip it. So we're going to add one of these and take this out. So next, we have this card. It doubles Discover. Whenever you discover again for the same value. The problem is, while we do have some Discover cards, there's not a ton, and I just don't find that we discover enough to play a doubler. Like, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I guess I technically took out 3, so we had 9. Oh, I guess we have the lands as well. I don't find myself discovering with these too often, but it's just not enough times to make this matter. Every time I play it, I just don't discover for the whole game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these out. Well, I guess I should show you the card. I'm going to put the 2 of these in. So this card, when it attacks, you can tap 2 untapped artifacts to discover 3. So you're going to discover way more with this. I mean, yeah, sure. Technically, if you play this, you get to discover 5 again. That's cool. But you're going to discover like maybe 1 extra time with this in a game. Whereas this, we can discover a lot with it. We're actually going to be playing more removal. And note that you can tap just any untapped artifact. And that's going to include stuff like this clay-fired bricks, right? You can just tap these. They don't do anything to discover with this. So I just think having more of these is so much better. So we're going to take 2 of these out, and we're going to add 2 of these. And I'm a fan. Finally, we're going to improve one of the Discover cards. So this is okay. 5 mana, up to 3 creatures can't block. It's fine, but you already kind of need to be ahead. And it doesn't impact the board. I mean, it does Discover 4, but it just doesn't do too much. So we're going to play one of the best Discover creatures in Standard, which is this. 4 mana, 3/2, discovers 3. This is so good. It's played in competitive decks. There are Rakdos Discover decks with Appraiser and Trumpeting Carnosaur. I played them on the channel, and it's pretty good. I like it a lot. So we'll take 2 of these out and add 2 more of these. It's also more efficient. It's cheaper. Makes a 3/2. I just think the 3/2 is more relevant than making 3 creatures unable to block for 1 turn. So now my main issue with this deck right now is we just have a lot of really clunky creatures that technically work sort of, but not very well. And I'm talking about stuff like all of these. These 3-drops are so awkward in this deck. I mean, it does make a treasure when it enters, but we have to control another outlaw. And this isn't even an outlaw deck, so that's not guaranteed. We have this, which at best is a 3 mana 4/4, which is fine, but like I'm not blown away by it. This is the most medium thing ever. I guess it can be tapped with this, and then it untaps on your opponent's turn, I guess. This just bounces something. We just have so many of these awkward, clunky 3-drops that I don't really like that much. So let's start by taking out 2 of these mine raiders, which do not make treasure nearly enough, and we'll replace it with 2 novice inspectors. This is a competitive all-star. 1 mana 1/2, that makes a clue. That's it. But that clue's an artifact that can be tapped with this. It's an artifact that's going to trigger the Justicar, the Justiciar, with this thing. And it's a great turn 1 play. It can trade with red aggro creatures. It's a nice defensive turn 1 play that also has late game relevance because it redraws, right? If you draw this turn 7, you play it, you get the clue, you sacrifice the clue, you draw again, which is also nice. So that's why this is played so much, and this is just clunky. We are removing the clunkiness, which is why we're going to add 2 more of these by taking out 2 of these. I mean, a 3 mana 4/4 is fine. I don't think it's bad. It kind of is. But, I mean, this is just like a competitive all-star. Very good. You'll see this in like 70% of the white decks in Standard for a reason. Just very good. It's a great turn 1 play. And a 3 mana 4/4 is fine. But there's probably better 3 mana 4/4s. I mean, should we check? Should we just check Standard? Should we check for 3 mana power equals 4? I don't know. I mean, I'd rather play this, and it's not very good either. We could play this. I'd rather play a 4/3 Trampler that prevents my opponent from gaining life. I mean, people are playing Miglaws. I mean, it's not in our colors, but it's a 3 mana 4/4 that just has so much utility. This, no. We'll take these out, and we will go up to 4 novice inspectors. Next, the stockpiling celebrants. It's a 3 mana 3/2. When it enters, you can return a non-land permanent you control to your hand to scry 2. So I guess the idea is you can bounce your discover stuff, right? Like you could play this, discover 3, then play this, bounce it, discover 3 again, and you can scry. You could also return this, I guess, and replay it for more 1/1s. Like, that's fine. I'd rather have an artifact that triggers our artifact stuff that's also a removal spell. We'll get the one that's in Standard right now. It's this one. Glass Casket, right? 2 mana. When it enters, you exile a small creature, mana value 3 or less. It's great in the early game. It can't kill everything, though we do have stuff like this for bigger stuff. But what's great about this is it's an artifact. So not only does it trigger stuff like this, but it can be tapped with the Sunborn, right? You can play this, remove a creature, then you can attack with this, and you can tap this to discover 3, which is super cool. And this is, it's just okay. So we're going to take these out. We're going to add a Glass Casket. Also, we're just making the curve much better because it was super clunky. So many 3 and 4 drops that just weren't that powerful in my opinion. Next, we're going to take out Thousand Moon Infantry. And we're going to add another artifact, but a much better one. It's the Saw Blade. I think this card's pretty cool and kind of underrated, I think, a little bit. So it is, it went over here. It is a 2 mana flash. When it enters, it deals 5 damage to target tapped creature. So it cannot hit creatures with vigilance. It's kind of a bummer. But for 2 mana, we can deal 5 damage to an attacker. It has flash, right? So we can do it during our opponent's combat step. Can also do it end of turn. And then it can craft with an artifact, which we have so many ways. We have so many artifacts. And when you craft with it, you make a 5/5 with just crew 1. And you don't even have to crew it if you have artifacts to tap. So it's another payoff for all of our artifacts if we don't have this, which we won't sometimes. And this, on the other hand, just doesn't do anything. I don't want to talk about it. It's just junk. Don't like it. Don't like it. So we're going to add one of these. We're going to add more because we're going to take out the old tech thingy. This is also pretty bad. It's a 4 mana 3/2. That just makes a 1/1. We are losing a lot of flying creatures, but I'm not mad about it. We're going to take this out and we're going to go up to 2 of these. And I just think that's better because I'd rather have the removal spell that turns into a 5/5. And finally, I would say this is optional, but I do think it's better. You have this on the job here, and we can swap it with Plated Onslaught, which is here. So Plated Onslaught is the same thing. This gives creatures +2/+1 until end of turn, and it investigates, and the investigate's pretty good. This, on the other hand, it doesn't investigate, and it costs 5, but it has affinity for artifacts, so this is almost always 2 mana. So the question is, do you want to pay 4 and get the clue token, or do you want to pay 2 and not get the clue token, but have it be cheaper? I personally find the Plated Onslaught to be a little bit better in my opinion, But honestly, both of these are fine. I just think 4's a little bit clunky. Like if I wasn't going to play this, I'd rather swap this with just another removal spell personally. But I actually think this is pretty solid. But I would say very, very optional in my opinion. And the last thing I would say, we have added a lot of white cards. So I think I want to take out 1 mountain for 1 plains. And that's it. That's our upgrade. So what we do now is we play artifacts. We have so many artifacts now that trigger stuff like this, that give us stuff to tap here. And we also are a very discovery card advantage-y thing with stuff like Geological Appraiser, Trumpeting Carnosaur, and the Sunborn. We took out a lot of the individual bad discover cards and we concentrated them with the more betterer discover cards. So yeah, I think it's pretty solid now. Some rares to consider if you're interested would include Thran Spider and 1000 Moon Smithy. So Thran Spider, I would say, is probably not 100% necessary. It's a 3-mana 2/4 reach. When it enters, you and target opponent each make Power Stone tokens. You want this in a ramp deck with big artifacts, which we don't really have. So I would say it's not necessary. It does have a way to dig for more artifacts, which I think is relevant, but not necessary. This, on the other hand, is excellent. 4 mana. When it enters, you make a gnome. Can I see it? Yes. You make a gnome that has power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts you control, which is going to be a lot, because we have a lot of these, like, do-nothing artifacts that just kind of sit on the battlefield. Oh, don't forget, by the way, that we have the clue token as well, right? So we have these, this as well, right? We have so many artifacts that just sit on the battlefield. So the gnome's huge. And then at the beginning of our first main phase, we can tap them, which tapping them is not really that punishing because they're just sitting on the battlefield, right? So it's fine. And it flips into a land that when we use it to cast a artifact, we make more gnomes, which is pretty good. And note that though this is legendary, it's kind of okay to play 4 of them because if you already have 1 on the battlefield and you play another, you just get the token, right? Like if you have 1 on the battlefield, you play the second one, you get the gnome token, and then you sacrifice 1, which doesn't matter anyway, right? So even though it's legendary, it's not very punishing to have multiples of them. And the things that we'd be taking out for this would be stuff like Aurelia, I guess Trumpeting Carnosaur, Bonehort Dracosaur. These are a little bit on the weaker side in terms of not really synergizing. I mean, they're just powerful, right? This is okay. It doesn't make treasure. Aurelia doesn't do too much for us. It does draw, which is nice. But we have so much card advantage with like the Discover stuff that it's kind of okay. And this is just raw power. I added it because it's a free rare that's just straight up powerful. But if you have these, could definitely replace these with the smithy. But yeah, that is our upgrades. Hopefully that's useful. I want to remind everyone that this is a budget 0 rare common and uncommon upgrade. We're taking a deck that you already had, not spending rares, and I do think this is going to be much more powerful. I've been playing this a lot with stress. Don't forget that this can flip. This is a very important part of the deck. Don't forget that this crafts and flips into a big artifact. So many games that I win because I flip a couple of these. So yeah, just be aware of that. But hopefully that's useful. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you in the next one.